Welcome to Unexpected Points. I am your host, Kevin Cole. I have with me today the co-founder, along with Evan Selva, who's a friend of the podcast here, Adam Levitan. Established the Run is the site, DFS guru, a lot of season-long content this year too, which I'm really enjoying here. And I know I've said for the podcast, I want to have a lot of people on here, some of the brightest and best minds in the industry. Now, I'm going to cop to it here. I have not been a big DFS player. I've been in my own, personal hell that a lot of people have been in, which is having young children these last few years. So I haven't got into it as much. Now I'm going to get into it more this year, but I'd say that I've been listening to you, Adam, for a while, just because I love hearing about the process that you have behind playing the game, despite the fact that I haven't been playing as much. I'm not just out here chasing dollar signs. I like to chase some of the process that you've had there. So I thank you for joining me today.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me.
So I want to get into a few different things here. One, talk about the business a little bit that you have there. Two, go over some DFS ideas generally, and then have some ideas about week one. Now, this is a unique season, obviously, everything that's going on with coronavirus this year, and with the no training camp and with no preseason, which I know has been a disappointment. So first, business-wise, now you and Evan established the Run a couple of years ago. I guess about a year ago, right?
Yeah, July of before last season.
So let me talk about that, because I know there have been independent sites before, but it seems like this is kind of happening more and more. I mean, how much do you think about the overall lay of the market before going after this, or is this really just a bet on your brand and your the attachment that you essentially your listeners and the people and your followers have to you and to Evan?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people think it's just like, hey, we'll just start doing this. We'll start a site and then we'll just start printing money and it'll be easy. And so I think the difference for us was we spent literally 10 years like building a brand, building a following, building the trust of people. And so to me, like that was all built up to starting our own business. It wasn't like it just started last July. Like ability to have people be willing to pay for what you think or pay for your information is not something that we would take lightly. And so, yeah, it's different. It's not, I don't view it as we just started last July. I view it as we started it 10 years ago and we've kind of been building to this point since then. I think that makes a big, big, big difference when it comes time to actually go for it.
Now, do you think there's been any, I don't know, I want to say copycatism, but do you think people have seen the success that you guys have had? And it seems to me like there's a little bit more of that coming through this year, that other people are jumping off into some pretty pretty big ventures with a lot of different names that are also going to that independent route.
Yeah, no, I think, shout out to us. I think a lot of people are like, oh, Evan and Adam can do it. Why can't we do it? And maybe they can. I hope that they do. I hope that there's enough room for everybody in the space, and maybe there is. So yeah, I'm happy for people though, man. Like, I don't like, why would I want to root for like some rich guy at some big company to keep making money off people who are busting their ass, trying to do it in fantasy every day? Like I'd much rather people, do it for themselves.
Well, how about this kind of entrepreneurship generally sort of thing? I mean, I know that you and, a name that comes to mind is thinking of, what Pete and what Jonathan Bales had done. They seem to be more into entrepreneurship writ large than maybe you are as more attached to DFS, or am I just seeing publicly your attachment and they really are kind of in the same bucket as you?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good read. I think the understanding how to I have no business background whatsoever, like none. I was a journalism major in college and I've been a writer and I worked for newspapers and all that. I was never on the business side. I probably thought that it would be simpler than it is, but that's why I have Taylor and I have Andrew, who have a lot of business experience in business previous to this, that are really doing a great job behind the scenes with the business stuff. So yeah, it's definitely a whole new world. And for me, I think the Fantasy Labs thing was, yeah, Peter and Bales are for sure way more into business and executing from that standpoint more than, busting balls on podcasts and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's probably the right read.
Well, how much? Okay, let's hypothetical here. If you could be making, I don't know, let's say you could be making like multiples, like 5x what you're doing, but it wasn't doing DFS. Would that be something that you would be interested in, or is it DFS itself is like the draw, basically?
Well, I guess it would depend what I was doing for 5x, but no, I mean, like, it's so corny to say like you should do what you love. Like, honestly, even if I wasn't working in DFS space, I would be doing all this. I mean, I would be doing all the research. I'd be trying to figure out edges, where's next, and how to win, and like that. Like, I still play a decent amount of poker. Like, I don't have anything to do with the poker business space, but I'm still doing the same stuff behind the scenes, just like what I really like to do. So yeah, it would have to be pretty cool and a ton more money for me not to want to do DFS. It's just DFS is just the best.
Okay, so let's talk about kind of more DFS generally, because it's interesting that you say, and I think I buy the concept that DFS is a little bit different than some other industries when we're talking about touting, essentially. Like you're saying, you're doing the research, you're able to put what you're finding out there, but it's not the same as recommending, I'm going to take the Lions +3 because of this reason or that reason. So, I mean, how do you think about issues within touting? Because I guess I differentiate between DFS because you're not being judged, I don't think, necessarily on your record, because there isn't a hardline record like that. And there are so many different permutations of what you can do that you can give out advice without essentially giving out a record, is what people are buying.
Yeah. To me, it's information, like, why would anybody, like, first of all, the NFL betting market is so liquid and so efficient. Like, anybody, I'm actually doing something right now with, I don't want to name names, but there's like a lot of people on Twitter who like talk about how they're up 200 units and they're up 60 units and they have some, 80%, 60%, 70% win rate. And what I'm doing is just finding their picks and taking the opposite. And that's like the best I've ever done in sports betting. So like, these people, like, it's just, anybody who knows anything about betting on sports knows that, like, if you're winning 3% ROI, if you're winning 4% ROI, you're like legit one of the best in the world. And so all these people like claiming that they're beating these markets for huge numbers are just like so obvious liars to me. In DFS, it's different. It's peer-to-peer, right? It's not this wildly efficient market. I mean, I play games against people who have the most egregious lineups you've ever seen. It's not, it has nothing to do with, the market is just not that efficient. On top of that, I think it's information, like, I hate sitting there and telling people what to play. I will tell you that, with X guy out, I think that Y guy is very likely to command, 24% of the targets this week or something like that. I'm not going to tell you that you should 100% play this guy, but this is the kind of information that it takes a lot of work and a lot of time to uncover the information, and then you can do with it what you want. So I really think that's been our motto. We've been very adamant about not touting and only talking about things that we actually know about.
Well, what do you think separates you then from the average? I mean, there are lots of people out there with a love of football. I mean, we see them on Twitter. They're grinding tape. They're, thinking of every possible thing. They're up on the news. They're on message boards. Like, what differentiates the knowledge that you can bring versus someone who just eats and breathes this stuff anyway?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think a lot of people are talking about the things that don't matter, right? I know, like,
right.
All you data guys like talk about noise. Like, most of what goes on in the NFL is just like straight noise. And so if you can project opportunity and understand opportunity in the NFL, like, all this fancy stuff is just so ridiculous. It's not what actually wins. And so I think we actually play big and we actually win, and like we know what actually wins in DFS. So I think that separates pretty well. And then, yeah, I think there's a delivery that people enjoy that is part entertaining and extremely knowledgeable and hardcore, but also an ability to like get it through to people in a way that the common man kind of understands. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of that. But you're absolutely right. Like, if I started today, I mean, would anybody know who I was? I would be in a sea of millions of people. There's a huge, and not to say that I was first, but there's a huge, huge advantage to being early at a minimum in really anything in life. Being early and like slightly wrong is better than being late and perfect, And so I had to deal with DraftKings in 2015, and that wasn't the earliest. There were people that were talking about DFS a ton in 2012 and 2013, but 2015 was early enough, I think.
And is part of that, I mean, I also want to think about not only the industry has grown a lot as far as the analysis industry, but then the game itself. Everyone's talking about how much sharper it is. What do you think about football specifically, how much sharper it is?
Oh yeah. I mean, look, man, like any game where you're playing for money and playing for serious money, it's going to get efficient, quickly. And so, yeah, there were times in DFS where like, talking to Peter about the days when in like 2013, 2014, he didn't even know, like he was like winning huge and he didn't even know what Roto World was. And like, he like found Roto World and he was like, oh my God, there's player news. I can find out who's hurt and who's not relatively easily. So yeah, I mean, it's just crazy. Like, the way that it is now, a lot of high stakes stuff is going to be if you're winning at 5% or if you're winning at 10%, like you're one of the best players, And so people have to understand that there's certainly small edges to be had there. I think there's bigger edges in the large field GPP stuff. And, I've talked to Drew a lot about this. We did a whole podcast about it, like having the stomach to get through all the variance in that large field, low dollar stuff takes a lot. But if you are willing to put the grind in, that's for sure. There's still edges there where you can win, 20, 30%, which is, in any other venture, like you're not winning 20 or 30%.
Now, but you're not really a GPP guy, though, right? So you're a cash guy. So tell me about that decision. Is it just a mentality and how you want to approach it, or do you think that your particular style of analysis lends it to one thing versus another?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm that good at it. Number one, I've tried to get better. I think it takes a certain kind of person to stomach like playing well for a month or 5 months or a year and not seeing any results because it's so top heavy and there's so much variance in these tournaments. So, yeah, it's not my favorite way to play. It's kind of the same with poker. I thought that, there's so much luck that goes involved into winning a poker tournament, and the outlay of time is just so much that it's just, the real players and the people trying to play for the highest stakes are playing cash. So yeah, I don't know, man. It's just me. I don't recommend anybody plays like me. I don't think that it's right at all.
Well, it's probably, yeah, I mean, so many like, it's like the entertainment factor is probably higher in some of these tournaments because it's like being an NFL fan before the season starts. Like some of your best days are spent during the offseason thinking about what will eventually happen, and then it happens, and it's kind of all a disappointment. But I could see the same thing being for a tournament player. I mean, the thought is you're building this lineup, and you're like, oh man, this is it. This is the one, right? And then so that's like the best part of the experience for most people is building the lineup and thinking about what's going to happen versus actually what goes down on Sunday. I mean, that's probably over about an hour into the game, and then you're moving on to the next slate.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it is fun. Like if I have a great week playing cash, I might like 2x or like 2.5x my buy-ins, right? And like, yeah, that's great. And like if you're playing big, like it's a lot of money and it's awesome. However, like the idea that you could 100x your buy-in in a week is obviously way more fun. Like I'm not going to deny that at all. It's way more fun.
Okay, so you probably have you're getting more feedback essentially as a cash player than as a tournament player, I think. I don't know. Would you agree with that? That this loop of kind of being able to gauge your own performance is easier within a cash player?
That's the part that I cannot take these GPP guys that are like, well, this team, yeah, I'll play this guy. Why not? I'll play this guy. And they're just like, yeah, whatever. I'm losing, but I'm still playing well. And your results like don't mean anything, because like you may never realize your equity over even like a 5-year span. So yeah, for sure, like you'll know quickly if you play enough slates, 1 p.m. only, 4 p.m. only main slate every week, you'll know quickly whether you're good or not. And the results will bear it out.
Because that's one of the concerns that I've had thinking about getting more into. I mean, number one, I'm lazy. So it takes a lot of work. And the contest selection, all that stuff, which I want to talk to you about because it's so important, that aspect of it, where that to me is more of a grind than doing the analysis and player this. But even thirdly is that even if I thought I knew what I was doing, if I was to lose, like let's say I go in and I'm trying to pick up these head-to-heads, I'm trying to play cash. If I lose that first week, I'm thinking to myself, man, maybe this isn't for me. Like right off. And then if another week comes on, so I'm trying to figure out from you've been in it long enough. Is there ever a concern that you're not going to know when the gig is up, essentially, if things do become that tight?
Yeah, I did an interview with Phil Galfond. I don't remember when, but I talked about this. Like, how do you know when you're beating the game or you're not anymore? And it's really hard. He says, you should go back and look at your lineup. You should go back and look at the way you played hands versus the way other people played hands. If you can't find any mistakes in the way they played and you find mistakes in the way you played, well, it's not good. So, football is harder than poker because the sample size is so small. But that's what I was saying about playing all the slates. You can play Thursday to Monday. You can play Sunday all through. You can play every slate and you get a much bigger sample. And so I think that's one way to raise your sample and figure it out. But yeah, I mean, I think anybody who gambles on a peer-to-peer basis, like you're always asking yourself, am I still beating the game? And like, when you include in your stats, like, let's say you have a 15% ROI, if that includes games from 2016, is that really relevant anymore? I don't think it is. So yeah, it's for sure worth considering.
I mean, are there successful players who can go half a season, a full season, and just not make any money, and would think, would not disqualify them from thinking that they are a successful player going forward?
Depends on what stakes. I think that if you're not beating games like, $100 and under, $100 double up and head to heads 100 and under, if you're not beating that for a half season, you probably have a major problem. If you're saying that you're a loser playing, the 1K double up in the Thunderdome every week, that could just be straight variance for sure, because the edges there are already so small. So I know, from a stats perspective, like when your edge is really small, like you could lose for a long time and it could just be variance,
Okay, but that kind of bridges into contest selection and figuring out where you want to play. So let's say, again, let's just kind of take a newbie perspective on here. Maybe not for someone who's playing the stakes that you are, but where would you could essentially just allocate every dollar though up the chain, right, as you're going along. So what would you say that chain is for someone who's looking to play and maybe not GPP? Let's think about some of the more cash head-to-head stuff.
Yeah, I actually wrote an article for free about this that people can read if they want, outlined exactly what games I think they should play. I think, the biggest thing you can do if you want to play cash at first is single entry, large field double ups. The multi-entry ones are going to get flooded with good people putting 150 lineups in and raise the cash line that way. So you want to play single entry double ups for the ones with as big a field as possible. And then, there's strategy for when to post your head-to-heads. I like to post them and let other people pick them up because the people posting are the most confident players. We'll play anybody. We'll post and play anybody. And so those people are going to be good. They're not going to miss anything. They're adjusting. I have one lineup that I'm adjusting across hundreds of games. So, I'm super hyper focused on that. I'm not going to make any like egregious mistakes. So if you post games at low stakes, I think Sunday morning, try to catch some people hungover, making lineups on their phone and stuff like that. I don't feel bad about trying to catch people like that because part of this is just trying to outwork people. So posting head-to-heads on Sunday mornings, single entry double ups, and then some of the multiplier stuff I think you can mix in and be fine too, triple ups, and some quadruple ups and stuff like that. I think you can find some good games into, and all this at lower stakes, you're better off playing $51 games than one $50 game.
How much of a time commitment is this to like pick off the contest, pick off the head-to-heads that you want, things like that? I mean, it sounds like a lot, but I can't tell. Maybe there is a way to streamline the process.
Yeah, DraftKings makes it easier than other sites. Like you can just filter exactly what you want to play and then hit +1, add to all, and you can add your lineup to all of the contests that fit those filters. But yeah, it's not a ton of work. Once you get the hang of it, maybe I spend an hour, 2 hours a week on registering for games.
All right, so let's go back to something you mentioned earlier about kind of knowing what matters or not. I know you had Josh Hermsmeyer, who was also a contributor there at Establish the Run. He's a stats guy, 538 now. He's complete like nihilism, football nihilism. Nothing matters, basically. There was a huge, kerfuffle where I think he's purposefully like pushing it a little bit with the defense doesn't matter, things like that. So from your perspective, like where would you say you fall into line as far as totally of a numbers type of mentality? Maybe do you think someone like Hermsmeyer is going too far versus going over on the other end and buying into a lot of different narratives that are happening that week?
Yeah, see, I think football is actually unique in that a lot of the soft analysis is actually good in NFL if people know what they're doing. Like I think Evan has like a unique ability to like watch games and to watch the way players are used and to take in news and to actually talk about what's going to happen the following week. And I think that's actually viable in the NFL. I know Josh has proved a lot of stuff about proved out a lot of stuff about it being very hard to project how a defense is going to play in a singular week. At the end of the year, there's going to be a defense that leads the league in yards per play against. That's just like it's going to happen. And so if you can be ahead of that and predict that, I think there's people who can do that. I think Josh's point is that like trying to say in week 3 that we know for sure that this Ravens defense is going to be smothering is just impossible to say. And I get that perspective too. So yeah, I think that there's so much stuff that's overrated based on small sample, based on all kinds of things, based on just like random variance in football. I mean, got 1 inch is like a touchdown from a pick 6 and all this, like, it's just so hard to pin it down in football. So I mean, I don't get into tape. I don't even get into like a lot of nihilism stuff. I really just think like if you can nail down opportunity and what opportunity is worth what and what's actual good opportunity, what's quality opportunity, you're just so far ahead of the game if you can just nail that down.
Okay, so how much of that is something that you try to quantify in the form of a projection versus, I mean, it wouldn't be range of outcomes, but you're kind of just like thinking about it as a pie more of on a mental basis than a straight projection. Because I mean, there are certain players you're going to project. I'm trying to think of. I've been doing projections this year, and someone like, let's say, Tyreek Hill. You have so many different options on that team that when you try to project certain guys, it's like hard to get them the opportunity that you want. Versus maybe Todd Gurley, where if you're projecting, everything's going to fall to them, but then that's not necessarily how you're really going to view them and how you really want to play them.
Yeah, I mean, so we spend most of our week, I mean, we have projections up for week 1 and we spend most of our week, like, we're literally talking about, like, should Miles Sanders have a target share of 9.2% or should we give 0.8 of that to Corey Clement? And, like, when you're doing projections, that's just, like, makes a huge difference, because like guys are going to look like good plays. It's narrow and guys are going to look like good plays with just a little bit of extra target share. And so, it's understanding the news and understanding projections from there. Like, do we believe Doug Peterson that he says Miles Sanders might need to be eased in, so there's soft skills with that too. And I hate when people call projections data because what we're literally doing is putting inputs in there for market shares that are soft skills. Like, again, do we know if Mike Evans plays, is he going to get a full complement of snaps? What do you think his target share will be compared to his baseline? And all that stuff is soft skills, and I would not consider projections a data point ever.
Do you work in both directions with projections, meaning, you divide it up, you do the projection. Do you ever look at the results and be like, okay, I gotta go back now and figure out what I did wrong on that projection? Because I mean, it can get a little bit dangerous, right? Because then you're just projecting for an outcome as opposed to trying to go through some sort of process. So how do you think about that? Because that's something, again, that I deal with and I'm kind of struggling with.
Yeah, I think in NFL specifically, like sanity checks are going to be important. If somebody, like we had a mistake earlier, like something wasn't scaling right and DJ Chark was projecting as like one of the best plays of the week. And I just went into it. I was like, there's no way this is right. We went back, we found the error. And like, that was an error case. I think there's cases where you think all your stuff is right. And it still looks weird. Maybe you need to reassess your process. Cause I think people have a pretty good sense of what's right and what's wrong in NFL. If guys are coming through that are just seem unfathomable, we should go back and check our process, I think.
Okay. Yeah, that's one part of it when it comes to like, okay, you mentioned that Evan and you think is really good at processing this information, and how much of it is just the fact that you guys have had these reps, right? So it's not just like we talk about having a lot of data to make a prediction on, but then again, you have these mental reps like a Madden player or something like that. Do you think that's the way that's an effective way essentially of what you guys are doing?
Oh yeah. I mean, we've been doing this for 10 years and I think it makes a big difference when evaluating what's coach speak and what's not, what matters on the injury report, what happens when a player sits out on Fridays, how coaches deal with players who miss practice, all that stuff, I think is soft skills that go into a projection. And again, like that's why projections are not data to me. It's like you really need to understand all that stuff. And I think, for sure, having experience, that makes a big difference.
Okay, so there have been, I guess, like I said, it's mostly other sports but there's definitely still a focus on using more numbers and using more analytics. I think it catches eyeballs. I mean, obviously, some of the work that I've been doing in fantasy football. Do you think people are skewing too far in that direction at this point?
It's hard for me to say. I think there's a lot of people out there that are doing good work with numbers that's extremely valuable for the real NFL. and probably valuable for dynasty, trying to figure out how good players are, and maybe for season long, where talent can shine through more and how good players are matters more. I think for DFS, I think people are probably have a pretty good case of FPS a lot, fancy play syndrome. I don't know, man. I don't think it's gone too far. I mean, I know like everybody hates the NBA now, right? Because guys are passing up like open layups for open threes. And I get that. But I do think that it's very like you don't need to be some math expert to understand why the NBA is going that way. And so, yeah, I think that it's probably right. A lot of the baseball stuff, I know people hate like all the analytics involved in baseball and, nobody bunts and they're using 10 different pitchers in one inning and stuff like that. Yeah, it sucks to watch, but it's probably right. So I don't know, man. I don't know if there's an answer.
All right, well, let's think about, what to consider or what to not in the frame of early season DFS. Obviously, this season's been a little bit strange. Like I mentioned earlier, we didn't have the preseason. We don't really know a lot of these injuries and other things. Would you suspect, I guess just from a macro view, do you come into it and say, I'm going to suspect people are going to be overreacting to news that's going on, underreacting, or are you just going to say, you know what, I'm going to look at each situation individually and not really think about where the market may be?
Yeah, for sure, each individual situation. But man, I mean, we know so much less now, and people are for sure overconfident in their takes. They're like, I know that Jonathan Taylor is going to play ahead of Marlon Mack Sunday. I know it. And like, you don't. I mean, like more than ever, like you don't. And so we're going to know a lot more. Like I was just looking at who's the Bengals' number 3 wide receiver. Like it wouldn't surprise me if it was John Ross. It wouldn't surprise me if it was T. Higgins. It wouldn't surprise me if it was Auden Tate. It wouldn't surprise me if it was Mike Thomas. Like it could be any of those guys. And so like to be overconfident and say, for sure that it's one, the difference is that like after week 1, we'll know so much more. Like let's say John Ross goes out and plays 100% of the snaps on Sunday. Well, in week 2, he's going to be massively owned. The cat's out of the bag. So I would encourage people, like, if you have a contrarian take, if you have a take you think is right, if you think John Ross is going to play 100% of the snaps on Sunday, like, do not second guess yourself. Like, people are way overconfident in their takes.
Now, do you think there's ever a window, though, where you're under confident, you're not confident enough after you've seen something that happened week 1? I mean, this is very anecdotal here, but I mean, it seems like to me that every year, well, not every year, but a lot of years, there are a couple of guys who just end up, just massive smashing the first week or the first couple of weeks. And then, so I guess we remember it more often when they keep going. Do you think we just remember it more often when they keep going? Or do you think there is something where you can catch a little window there of them being under-owned the next few weeks?
Yeah, I think the market
specifically a running back, I guess, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, people are looking so much at opportunity and usage now rather than box scores. So, if, say, Zach Moss goes for 3 touchdowns, but he only played 25% of the snaps and only handled 30% of the running back carries, he won't even be owned that much in week 2, And so I think people are game log watching less, whereas in 2015, 2016, if Zach Moss had 3 touchdowns but had terrible usage, you better believe that he would be like 70% owned in week 2,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's changed from that perspective, and people, are just smarter. They're looking at underlying usage more, and I think that's a big spot where edge has been kind of eroded a bit, I would say.
And have you tracked to see for your own personal results early in the season, whether they differ that much from later on in the year?
I have access to that data, but I actually haven't looked at it. It's a good question. I'm not sure. The samples are going to be so small. Like, even though I've been playing since 2015, like September is only 4 weeks. I have 20 weeks. I don't know. Is that enough to say that September is softer than another one? I don't know. Maybe it is. I don't know.
Yeah, I just know this. I mean, again, this is in the more quantitative sort of stuff that people talk about. A lot of the edge being squeezed out by the time you get to midseason in different sports, things like that. So I didn't know if there was a similar phenomenon going on with DFS.
DraftKings and FanDuel are spending millions as we speak on customers acquisition, right? And so a lot of these people are going to come in and they're softer than the people that will be still playing in week 9 and week 10. So from an opposition perspective, for sure, the best games are going to be them, but we also know, way less. We're going to be playing worse than we will be in week 9 and week 10.
And the uniqueness of this offseason, there have been some incidents in the past in different sports. I mean, I guess probably in football it hasn't been for quite a while, but strikes or lockouts, some people have been able to make hay on the fact that there are kind of these structural changes that people don't think about. Do you think there's a possibility for anything like that? I've seen some people with some takes that, there'll be an advantage of offense over defense or something of that nature. Do you think it's possible something like that will happen, or are you just willing to wait and see and maybe not react until there is something to actually react to?
Yeah, good question. I know there's data from the lockout that games were higher scoring coming out of training camp. I don't know. I mean, I think that there can be more communication breakdowns defensively that can lead to big plays. That's one narrative I can maybe buy into, but I'd be hesitant to put a lot of money into a narrative like that without some more data to back it up. And I'd have to, and it's just hard to, we don't have data on this really at all. Like the lockout, I think is a kind of a weak correlation. Like I would be hesitant to make too many takes about that.
Okay, so again, without the information we're having, rookies have been a big question. I guess another question would be a backfield or a receiving core that's changed year over year. Are you thinking any differently about how you may give a discount to things to situations that have changed more, or give a little bit more credence to those who are rolling over year over year?
Yeah, I mean, in no other sport is talent as I don't want to say meaningless, but means less in football. Like if Kevin Durant goes from the Warriors to the Knicks, he's going to smash on the Knicks. There's no question. When Odell Beckham goes from, whatever situation he had in the Giants to the Browns, there's room for it to be a mess because scheme change, because quarterback change. I mean, you're so reliant on coaching, on scheme, on quarterback, on all the 11 other guys on the field in NFL. So, on 10 other guys on the field. So yeah, I'm wary of guys changing teams for sure. There's an ugly history of guys changing teams in the NFL, specifically veterans on big free agent deals. And yeah, I mean, scheme and coaching is so important. So yeah, I think being wary of guys changing teams makes a lot of sense.
I've seen some commentary. I think if you've said, hey, Coach A, you discount everything he says versus Coach B. I don't know if you can ever believe anything a coach says, but there's certain coaches. So do you ever think, well, maybe I'm basing a little bit too much on a couple of situations that have happened in the past, and maybe they are believable. Maybe Bruce Arians isn't a complete fraud when it comes to what's going to happen this year. He just didn't know what he was saying before because of some sort of enthusiasm or something like that.
Right. Yeah, that's fair. I guess so. There's just some guys that are just always going to, no matter what the reporters ask them, they're going to say, yeah, this guy's great. He's going to play a ton. Or this guy, this guy's my guy. There's just some coaches like that. They're never going to say a bad word about any of their players. And it's notable when they finally do say a bad word about their players, Yeah, it's a point well taken, though. I do think Bruce Arians wants Ronald Jones to play well and be the guy. I also think if you asked him about Leonard Fournette, he'd say he wants Leonard Fournette to play well and get a ton of work also. He just wants all his guys to be the man and play well, that's just how he's going to answer questions.
Yeah. I mean, it's always interesting to me because when it comes to some of these coaches, I can't tell if it's, not that they're doing it on purpose, but whether, I guess they just don't care, or they're just trying to avoid headlines sometimes, but then they end up actually giving headlines. I mean, if you added up the amount of touches that some coaches think are in a game, it's like 250 touches are gonna end up happening in some of these games. So I guess some of them are just trying to avoid that type of blowback that may end up happening. All right, so here I'm gonna hit you with a couple of 4 questions here. I'm going to call this. I'm trying to think out. I had 3 last week. I'm going to go 4 questions this week. Where this cover 4 segment, where I'm giving you a question. I have in my mind the correct answer, but I'm going to let you take a shot at it first. And the first question that I have is for Evan Silva, your buddy, our buddy here. What do you think? Do you have in your mind what was his worst offseason take? Do you have a worst offseason take that you can go with
for this year?
For this year, yeah.
Yeah, I would say I probably disagreed with him most on thinking Calvin Ridley is going to be outrageous this year and top 5 fantasy wide receiver. I don't think that we ended up with him there, but I think Calvin Ridley's had chances to do what Chris Godwin did last year and just hasn't done it, specifically when Julio Jones has been on the field. So Yeah, that was one I disagreed with on. I know a lot of people probably think DeAndre Hopkins won. I actually agree on the DeAndre Hopkins one for a lot of the things that we talked about. Yeah, I also think Rob Gronkowski is going to just be a total disaster from a fantasy perspective. But yeah, that's a story for another day.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on Ridley. Yeah, I don't get this love for guys who haven't, like, they've had opportunities, right? I mean, not that he hasn't done anything, but he's had his opportunity to go. So I think that is probably correct for his worst take. Although I'm just going to always say anything Josh Allen related just falls into any MVP Josh Allen take is obviously his wrong one. So I haven't heard you talk as much about this, but I know that there's like a complete overlap if you look at the Venn diagram of poker, DFS, and Bitcoin. So I need to know. I need to have a hot Bitcoin take here. So if you were going to invest all of your life savings in something, would it be just the U.S. dollar, gold, or Bitcoin? Let's say you couldn't touch it for 20 years down the road.
Oh man. See, I think that everybody should have like 1 to 2% of their net worth in Bitcoin. If you told me I had to put 100%, it would not be Bitcoin. So it would be down to gold or USD. I don't really know that much about gold. A lot of people have been touting me gold lately. I haven't bought any. Like, people are touting me like I should buy like actual gold bars and like store them in my attic and stuff like that.
Apparently, Elon Musk is going to mine it from Jupiter or something. So
I heard about that.
You have to watch out for that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not as into Bitcoin as some of the other guys. I just think it's like kind of like a standard like asymmetrical bet where like if it goes to zero, like it's, that kind of is what it is. There's also still a chance, even at its current price, like where it could really exponentially go. So yeah, but I think 1 to 2% is right. I'm sure some people would say more.
All right, yeah, I'm just going with the good old U.S. dollar there, but I could see you going either way. I just think the Bitcoin thing is funny to me because I can't separate when people are talking about it, whether it's kind of like talking your book in a way, right? So like once you're in, if you had like 20% of your net worth in Bitcoin, you better think it's going to $20,000, or else what are you doing there? So yeah. Anyway, DFS guys, don't put it all on Bitcoin, please. All right, so this next one here is the shower narrative. Okay, I'm a big fan of the shower narrative, but I've noticed a couple where I'm trying to think if there's a leak. There's a leak in the shower narrative here, being if you have a college situation, let's say like a Haskins and a Terry McLaurin situation, does it still apply if McLaurin didn't do anything in college, essentially? He wasn't that good in college, right? Yeah, they were showering, they're doing all that stuff. The guy ended up, I mean, he was a third-round pick, but it wasn't like he was touted at all. He didn't come out as a big guy. So does it still apply? Does the shower narrative always apply? Is there a bond that's given there, even if he didn't make McLaurin a first-round pick when they were in college?
Yeah. Of course, once you shower with someone, you have that bond that is unbreakable. And so when you go to the NFL, you have great chemistry with them. And that's why you're seeing Terry McLaurin start going. He's been going on like the third round of drafts. It's wild. And so yes, it wasn't the showers problem that Ohio State didn't use Terry McLaurin correctly. It was Ohio State's problem.
Yeah, I agree there. Although I think that may be an underplayed aspect on here is that, the quarterback still controls all. So we'll see there. And then, so my last question here, before we wrap up is, you're a noted a germaphobe. Before it was cool, before it became the worldwide phenomenon. So I want to know from you, if you had to have a choice. Number one, you have to live in a socially distanced world, personally, just for you, forever. Or if you didn't, you would have to go out, and that every greeting would be, like one of those European kiss hellos on both cheeks every single time you met someone. If you had to choose between those two options, I guess your kids or your family, they could still go live their lives. But you would have to be socially distanced. What would you choose?
Yeah. this social distance thing has not affected my life really that much at all.
You've been preparing your whole life for this. I've been preparing my whole life for this too.
Really,
so, yeah.
I mean, I don't want to offend anyone, but it really hasn't been that bad. I mean, it really hasn't. So yeah, I don't know, man. I don't mind the kiss on the cheek that much. I guess that's not what's most disgusting to me. So I'd probably choose that. But if it was like something worse, like playing shirtless basketball in like 100-degree weather against other dudes, yeah, like that would be out. So yeah.
So it has to do with like a fuller body contact is gonna be the issue there.
Yeah, I mean, usually when people are kissing on the cheek, they've showered, they're okay. You know, it's yeah.
So that's gonna be all right. Yeah. All right, I'm with you on that one. Well, Adam, thanks for your time here again. You should definitely be listening to everything they're doing on the Establish and Run podcast. I'm listening to it all the time. Everything else that's going on. I assume you guys are rolling out some big DFS packages. I don't know if you wanna pitch anything right now.
Yeah, no. If you follow me on Twitter at Adam Levitan and you go to establishandrun.com, you'll be able to see everything that we have on there.
All right. Thanks so much, Adam, and thanks for tuning in.
You want to get rid of me and get back to more great PFF YouTube content? All you have to do is push that button right there and subscribe. Thanks for watching.